Come home late and you come home early. Come home big when you're feeling small. Come home straight and you come home curly. Sometimes you don't come home at all. So why in the world come over you? What in heaven's name have you done? Broken the speed of the sound of loneliness. Out there running the city on the run. I got a heart that burns with a fever. I got a worried and a jealous mind. How could a love that could last forever get left so far behind? Why in the world has come over you? What in the heaven's name have you done? Broken the speed of the sound of loneliness. Out there running just to be on the run. It's mighty strange and a dreadful sorrow. It's crossed the evil line today. How can you ask about tomorrow? Ain't got one word to say. What in the world has come over you? What in heaven's name have you done? Broken the speed of the sound of loneliness. You're out there running just to be on the run. Come over you. What in heaven's name have you done? You've broken the speed of the sound of loneliness. You're out there running just to be on the run. You're out there running just to be on the run. Through streams and bogs and underbush, I make my weary way. Through windfalls, thick and Davos floods, my aching feet it straight until at last evening starred on higher ground again. And there I met with a Creole girl by the lakes of Good evening to you, my Creole girl, my brain, it is no good. Although I fear the gators, I must defend the wood. You're welcome here, kind stranger, my house is very plain. But we never turn a stranger out by the lakes of rain. She took me to her mommy's house and treated me right well. The hair around her shoulders and jet black ringlets found. I tried to describe her beauty, I would find it in vain. So beautiful was my Creole girl by the lakes of Well, I asked her if she would marry me. She said that there could be, because she had a lover far away at sea. She said that she would wait for him and true she would remain. And no, he did not come back to the lakes of home. So fairly well, my Creole girl, I'll never see you more. I'll never forget your kindness in the cottage by the shore, and at each social gathering a flowing glass of rain. And I bring my house to my Creole girl by the lakes of rain. And at each social gathering a flowing glass of rain. I have to my Creole girl by the Greetings, greetings. How you doing? How you doing? Decided to do just a quick hangout tonight. Might do a few chapters from Alice in Wonderland, not Alice in Wonderland, from Through the Looking Glass, if anyone's interested. I think we'll do halfway through it, so yeah, the quicker we get through it, the better, I think. A few things occur again, so I won't be sort of reading it and scrutinizing it for every little possible meaning or anything like that. That's not the purpose for me. But I understand that other people who are taking an interest in it will have their own sort of leads and will have their own level of inquiry into all of this, and that has to be as well. You know, we're all coming at this from different points of view. So that's the main reason I'm coming on tonight. Like probably usual, I just take away all the wrenches. I don't know what to do about it at this stage. So I'm just not going to worry about it for tonight, and just hope everything goes smoothly enough. I mean, you know, I think I made myself fairly clear that we understand the situation. Moving into the way I look at it, moving into the final stages, and you never know where you're going to pick up good information. You just never know it, you know. So we do understand the arena, and we proceed knowingly, I guess. So yeah, let me go straight into it. I won't put on my camera tonight. There's no need for it. Let me go straight into it, and yeah, just it's one of those things. Last night, after reading this, just was lying in bed having a little think, and yeah, one of the other problems I was working on, I think it's almost settled at this stage. And if it is almost settled, it's the end of it. It's just the end of it all. There's just no disputing it. And especially on the back of some of the stuff that I have been saying anyway regarding just what the light show above us is. So yeah, I'm happy with that, and yeah, I'm still working on the puzzle. A few very interesting clues. Alternate. Pointed out last night, Alice is 7.5. 7.5 played a. Here we go. Let me bring it up. So, and this is how simple it is. So, let me just walk you through that. Again, this won't be aimed at everybody because Adam, I just was talking to Adam A4 today, and he thought I was winding him up regarding the dodo, but I'm not winding him up, you know. But I guess it'll take some thinking, I guess, and some considering. It's not one of those things, I guess, you know, to put out. I guess I could sum it up briefly in maybe a 10-minute video, put a few slides together, something like that. But it's definitely one of those things that you have to work your way through it yourself. Again, this is a puzzle for all of us. Alice is all of us. The way I look at it now, someone called Puma left a few interesting comments as well, and that's what I'm raging at. And all the comments were just filled up with deleted messages, you know, for comforts and all this. But that's all I ended up with. But a few scanned comments, and then it was all of this deleted messages and banned accounts. And I missed all of the earlier chat when there was no wrenches, you know. So I don't know what's the best way to proceed. I think none of us should be taking it too seriously at this stage anyway. And it's only going to get crazier. That's all I can say. It's only going to get sort of crazier. And if you get emotionally attached easily, well, you're in for, I think you're in for a bumpy ride anyway. So we have to detract ourselves somewhat from the whole situation and take a broader view, because there is a broader picture there. Let me just go into yeah. So that's the music that came up. I'll just show the page now. Let me play that for a second. Here we go. So you can hear the music there. Might let that play for a second. Let me pause that a second. So what I take from this now, again, let me actually yeah, I'll pause it when it gets to it. See my cursor here. Let me move that down here. Nearby sevens. And we also have 7E here. So nearby sevens, as we were reading Alice in Wonderland last night, we find out that Alice is 7.5. That's the first time it's mentioned. I want to point out something else as well. I haven't listened to it yet. I'm going to wait till I finish reading the book, but I found John Gielgud has done a reading of Through the Looking Glass as well. So again, just to reiterate the first amazing clue that he gave when he read Alice in Wonderland, you can go on YouTube, just type in John Gielgud, Alice in Wonderland, bring up the book, and he leaves out entirely chapter 3, which is completely nonsensical, since it's for one, you know, the dodo is associated most with Alice in Wonderland. So when you go to John Gielgud and listen to the audiobook and you find that there's no sign of the dodo whatsoever, well, that's a big clue to you, isn't it? In a sense, you can be sure it's not a slip up, or it's some drunken late night error. You know, this is when we put it together with the rest, it makes perfect sense. This is guiding us in this way, and who better? You see, the thing is with all of these clues, right? They have to be made available to everybody via many different points. And I pointed out yesterday how the statue of King Arthur, Richard Harris, in the center of Limerick here, held the ultimate solution. within its design. You know, it had the King Arthur, which is all about the North Center. X marks the spot, and the eights. It's all about the eights. So 8 is the alpha and the omega, and again, Alice is heading for square 8. So once we work our way through the rest of the novel, or the book, our book of instructions, probably the most coded book in history. Everyone points there. Aleister Crowley. The only purpose you need to know about Aleister Crowley is pointing you to Alice in Wonderland, and he's telling you they want you to get distracted within the Satanist stuff and the most evil man in the world. You know, well, if the 180-degree rule applies, maybe the opposite applies. You know, we have to bear these things in mind. There is a greater game going on here. You must see the significance of it at this stage. You just must do if you've been taking it semi-seriously. So we have to sort of really apply Alice and what we learned from Alice in Wonderland and Alice to Looking Glass to everything. So that's all you need to take from Aleister Crowley. You know, it's the first thing he needs his students to understand well. You know, let's just type in Aleister Crowley and Alice in Wonderland. So again, this is what you need to do. And the Beatles were always associated with Aleister Crowley, but that's all they're telling you as well. Go to Alice in Wonderland, right? So it'll be interesting just to when I finish the book here, and then to listen back to it. I should listen to the first one again. I just stopped after chapter 3. You know, I said there's no chapter 3 there, but I should definitely I will listen to that again, because again, when you're reading something, a certain amount of concentration is required, especially if you're not a great reader like myself, and you sort of lose half the meaning. But yeah, I look forward to hearing John Gielgud, and if there's any pertinent omissions from Alice Through the Looking Glass. But here we see nearby sevens. And is it that simple? I think it might be at this stage. I mean, how else would you connect it though, unless you realize the significance of Alice in Wonderland, you know? So once we do realize the significance, nearby sevens is telling us Alice in Wonderland, but also, as Alternate pointed out yesterday, while 5 is E, or E is 5, so 7.5 is exactly Alice's age, 7 years, 6 months. And again, I pointed out the symbolic significance to that. We're almost there, you know. We're close to 8. We're close to solving all of this and reunification and remembering the past. Now, there's another clue within here. I'll talk about that the next time. So I didn't want to particularly. I'm not going to particularly talk about this, but yeah, if you know, oh yeah, there's another with the 7E as well. G5. This is G5 if it's reversed. And I'll talk about G5 now in terms of Wi-Fi, and I even heard it mentioned today on some video that just came on randomly afterwards. You know, if you leave the video running, and yeah, G5 has been talked about, and it talked about taking it to infinity. Honestly, I'll have to go back wherever I heard that. Sort of dozing this morning, but it would all the terms they were using. 24 came into it as well. 24 backwards is 42. So all the terms they were using, I could associate with this ultimate puzzle that we're on here. So again, G5 is potentially significant here, but it's all of these simple things. And this long, convoluted, it would be an impossible code unless you have all the little pieces, but I don't think it's going to be so difficult. So I'm just leaving that sort of mull for a while and make our way to the rest of the book. So yeah, let me just bring that up a second. Made a very important point as well. We have to consider everything. Alice, all lice, all of us are a parasite, which again would tie in with what may have happened. Is it our own fault? Is our own punishment for our own hubris or whatever, you know? I mean, we have no way of knowing, you know. We have no way of knowing the real situation. I mean, when you start incorporating giant trees into your reckoning, and again, it's not going back thousands of years ago or almost a distant ancient time. You know, this for me now, I've settled on it. When they say the dodo was this disc covered 420 years ago that means to me. And that just tied in with other things I was thinking as well, regarding likes of Anatoly Fomenko and how the Dark Ages were completely fabricated. Moving on then to the idea, Google 1649ish, that there's no source material for any documentation that could be found that dates to a date previous to 1649ish. And I think that date was chosen specifically as well. 52 is 4 13s, right? And it gives you the full deck. And if you include the starting date, it's 52 years from 1598 to 1649ish. So I take that to be pretty pertinent. Nothing is by accident at this stage. So yeah, I literally take it that 1598 was the year of the deluge, was the year of the inundation, was the year the barrier collapsed and the face of the earth changed. So that's where the dodo was discovered then. So they had mapped out the earth in a rough form, the face of it, as you were looking down on it, that what you see is the dodo. Again, you have to imagine it beyond the continental shelves of each country. It's a true land. So if you drain the water away, this is what you're left with. You know, that involves taking away all the water from like the likes of the Mediterranean Sea. I mean, at one stage, it talked about in the past, Ireland and Britain being connected and Britain being connected to mainland Europe. So this is the idea. Once you take away that a certain amount of water, then the face of the earth exposes itself. And this is what we have in the form of the dodo. It's just literal. That's what it is, you know. So what you're asked to do then is to find, amongst all of the confusion, find the most accurate actual landmass sizes and proportions. Take that, take it to the official representation of the dodo, which again I have. It's not too difficult to find, and start at the tip of the beak. So size up South America, with line it up with the tip of the beak and orientate it along the dodo. And then you have to, there's two other points as well. So where you line things up, and that the clue there was the parts of the dodo that were said to have been found intact, and there were very few. I think there were 3 parts. So yeah, that's the idea. You scale down. So that as you scale down South America, the continent, to fit around the bill, then you scale down equally everything else, and then it's just like a jigsaw piece. It's just slot in around this official representation of the dodo, and that's the idea. And 419 years. There's no other reason why they would pick 1498, and again, it ties in with everything then as well. All our fabricated history stems from there. That's why I say Leonardo da Vinci didn't exist. He's sort of the perfect man in a way. And I also thought about this. I mean, he's associated with the Shroud of Turin, which gives some sort of validity to the real existence of Jesus. But what better way to take complete attention off this other fabricated character than to have him involved in potential fakery regarding another character whose existence is in question as well. It's sort of brilliant, isn't it? So you know what, wherever you stand on questioning the existence of Jesus, which doesn't matter, by the way, Jesus is the Son. Jesus is the Son. I mean, it's we have to, I don't know what to say. There's no, we have to get away. Why would we? Okay. I think if you're just that religious, and this is not taken, there's a creator in my life, I'm not some sort of atheist or some sort of nihilist or naysayer here. There is a creator in my life, but we got to be careful. Who is the creator to you? What's your vision of the creator? I mean, we have to be careful to give our attention away to other people's visions of a creator or a crafted sort of picture that was formulated for you from day one. So, and I know, including myself, many people have had experiences, so this is not to take away from anything like that, but Jesus is the fabricated character, and it's represented. What Jesus represents is more important than the man himself. Within all of us is the perfect man or perfect woman, or Genesis, the way I say, Jesus is Genesis 1 man, which incorporates everything. So it's allegorical, representative. And again, most importantly, Jesus is the Son. When Jesus and the 12 disciples are the stars. This is all about the Bible, the Bible. We have Genesis 1, Genesis 2. There's your two. Do. Iver hey, never do, iver three, iver kahar. Do is two. So it's all about two and a split system. So we have to sort of think along these lines. And you don't want to be, the last thing you want to do is be fooling yourself anyway. So you have to consider these things. You just have to consider them. We have to be willing to let everything go, you know. That doesn't mean you end up naked and with nothing. There's so much more to find in reality. But yeah, the illusions have to be shattered. And there's plenty of clues out there. I think if you've come this far, see, people here, let me just say this as well about the Bible. So when it's a heady thing to cast aside the cloaks of science, you know, the cloaks of authority that they've sheltered you and protected you within all your life up to now. So there's a big blankness and there's always a nakedness when you are brave enough to cast it away. I mean, if you're after truth, you have to cast away the lie. So yeah, that is a daunting outlook that's presented to anyone, especially a flat earther who's, you know, once you get to flat earth, you realize that pretty much everything else has been fabricated as well. But this is where the Bible then comes in with their many flat earth references, not even encoded. They're pretty on the surface. But yeah, you revert back then to thinking, well, at least I have 6,000 years of the Bible, and they knew back then something that we didn't know now. No, I'm saying that that's not true now either. The Bible, it was exactly what it says in the tin. We went from being a one-ball system. It's everywhere. The apple with the bite out of the apple. We talked about Humpty Dumpty last night. And you might necessarily agree with that, my interpretations of that, but they are valid. They are valid. It's an interpretation, and you know the truth is still eluding us completely to a proven degree, anyway. But yeah, that's the way I see it. The Bible collapsed, or the bowl collapsed. The intact bowl collapsed. We had the inundation, and then the Bible was written. The Bible, all encoded, all representative, and I'm happy enough that Shakespeare and the Bible, the works of Shakespeare and the Bible, were written by the same hidden hand, as were the works of Mozart, as were the works of Lewis Carroll, and so many others. So many others. You know, when you ask who exactly is the hidden hand, well, this is a question, isn't it? HH, 8 to 8, infinity. I'll go through this. I'll just do this again. Yeah, not to dwell on this. Let me go off this. Let me just go on. Let me just do this quickly. Shit, hang on. Yeah, it's all about the 8. Okay, 2. I'm just trying to reinforce the point that it is all about the 8. The reason I'm mentioning this now, so let me go into a brush here. That's a bit big, isn't it? Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, the 8, the infinity sign. Right? All it is a twisted circle. Simple, right? God is the Alpha and the Omega. I knew how to do those signs at one stage. What's the Alpha and the Omega? It's the Alpha, I think. What's the Omega? Yeah, the Alpha and that is the Alpha, actually, isn't it? Let me see. Yeah, the Alpha. What is the Omega? So actually, if you took that, right, if that is the Omega, and you sort of connected it on here, then you'd have your 8. But again, the Alpha is the beginning at 0, both undefinables, and the Omega is the infinity. So it's undefinable. And it's one thing I ask any of the ball earthers, ball antagonists, when they say, well, math, we can trust math. Math will deliver the truth for us. Well, it won't. Stupid thing to say that. No, it can't. If you're, first of all, trying to define reality by using math, surely you have to define the terms that you're using within that math that you're trying to define reality by before you can sort of claim any truth to any of your conclusions. And when you find out that they in math there is no definitions for constantly used terms like 0 and infinity, then you say, well, how the hell is that possible? Then you can define reality using terms that you haven't defined. So infinity, if you haven't defined it and you use it, it could be a horse. It could be a horse wearing people's costume. It could be, it could be anything. It could be a fart. You haven't defined it. So, yeah, at that, the back is broken in terms of the claim when you just think in those terms. But yeah, so now we look at the dodo, right? Look at the word dodo. This is how significant it is. I'm telling you, none of this is incidental. I'm being a bit more careful here, obviously, but still in all. Now I said the solution to everything is H. The H's look familiar as well. I mean, rugby ball posts, right? That's the rugby ball shape. We saw the shape of the rugby ball on The Economist 2015. That told us what we're looking for. When we find a dodo, then we see the land mass as they're arranged around the dodo take this form, elliptical form. And we can also say then that around the land masses, it has an elliptical form as well as the sun, as the sun travels in an elliptical fashion around the flat Earth. So that's, let me just get rid of that. So yeah, the HH, well, HH is 88. And HH is hidden hand, by the way. The hidden hand emerged from the dodo's wing. Once you realize that the dodo represented the flat Earth map, then you already know that the dodo's wing represents the North Center. And as we saw the Sergeant Pepper's, the walrus's paw, walrus is a mustache underneath the dodo's wing, pointed up towards the North Center, where there you have, emerging from beneath the wing, was the hidden hand with the cane representing the axis mundi. So we have the 8-8. Let's see what 8-8 looks like on its side. I'll try to be careful as well. Just go over it. Shit. You get the idea anyway. And you could say that's all coincidence. You can say what you like, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you say. You can think all you like. I think what I think, and I say that this is no coincidence, and especially when you have the rest of the connections there. So you can see that this is a direct correlation, especially when we do realize exactly what the dodo means. I mean, again, this is a story about everything. This is her story. This is not his story, not my story. It's our story, or her story. So all of this is connecting in an intricate fashion, and it's just sort of, you really have to throw out, or be willing to throw out, pretty much everything, and ask the basic questions. What is real? How long does our history extend back to? What's the best piece of evidence I can quote myself to convince myself that X history has X amount of time under its belt. Well, I think if you look deep enough, you will come to the same conclusions as I have come to. And again, before 1598, everything was different. When you entertain giant trees, well, you got to entertain giant beings then, don't you? There was no oppressive ether. At that stage, there was no sun, there's no moon. It's just going to be a different system, intact system. Yeah, but you're talking about monstrosities, I'm guessing. And I looked into mud fossils. That's fascinating stuff, isn't it? I mean, that's beyond our wildest reckoning. But this is the realm we're in. Everything is fantastic. Another interesting fairy tale for the children, Jack and the Giant Beanstalk. you know, yeah. IPS is named Jack as well, isn't he? All these little things we have to sort of bear in mind. And again, we have to go to fairy tales. We have to go to myth, legends to find out a truth before 1598. Anyway, after 1598, we have some grasp on that, even though it's vague enough. It's vague enough, and it's still an enormous period of time, 419 years. So I say that 420 years, HH, you can associate with Hitler, Heil Hitler. Hitler was born 420, and we were told that Hitler has one ball. Again, wouldn't mean anything to you. You diminish him. Everyone has a knee-jerk reaction when they hear Hitler, and you know, there's a few even conspiracy rabbit holes laid out for you. You know, we find out that, hang on, our history of Second World War mightn't be all what it was cracked up to be. Then you get into the Holocaust conspiracy, which again is put there right for you, you know, right before you. And then you possibly look into Hitler escaping to Argentina and a man living out his years. All of these different things. All you have to take from it really is the HH represents the 420. So the great work, which is 420 years since the inundation, before completion. And then that takes us up to 2018, which is next year. I already connected that in numerological senses. This is where the truth is told in cartoons, not cartoons, animation, in symbolic fashion, you know, in terms of words, a million and one different languages, but everyone understands a picture of, I don't know, whatever, sort of cartoon representation. Picture paints 1,000 words, isn't that what they say? So, yeah, this is what Alice in Wonderland is to teach us as well. So, without further ado, I was going to actually, yeah, I can leave that. Just to leave it there. Yeah, look, it's too close, isn't it? It really is. And one is obviously 8-8. This is the ultimate significance, because once you solve the dodo, then you move on to find out about 8-8 and hidden hand. And then you find out that they're behind everything. Now that you know about 8-8, watch yourself seeing them everywhere. You see 8s everywhere, you see H's everywhere. And you see, if you look a bit more deeply, then you'll see 420s or 42s, and then 420s. 42 was always said to be, as I'm going to include Douglas Adams as well in his works, they were written by the hidden hand. So you'll see 42s in places, but that's not the ultimate answer. They'll never give you the ultimate answer. You always have to do something with it. In Gematria, you're always told, drop the 0, drop the 0, drop the 0. So we reverse that and we get 420. And again, cannabis users amongst us and others know the benefits of the cannabis plant and the significance of 420 as a number. Again, it brings a smile to your face, and we know it's associated with good times, in other words. So that's all you need to take from the HH regarding Hitler. With the swastika, it tells you, doesn't it? Swastika is it point, the North Center is in the center, and you have the Great Bear as it's seen through the different seasons. That's all it is. Simple as that. You know, you're taught love, hate. You're taught to attach emotion to all of these symbols, but no, it's telling a real story. And the more I find out, the more I search anyway, the more I see that this is the real story. As I pointed out yesterday with the statue in the town. Fact, you know, everything lined up. Not only did it have the solution, which is the X, I forgot about the X marks the spot, but it also had the 8s along the belt, the infinities along the belt. And again, King Arthur, who we already know is associated with the North Center and the Holy Grail, the Holy G-Rail, the Holy G-Rail. That means something different to me now than when I thought about it first, because G now represents the sun, and that's why you have again in the middle of your keyword G and H, capital G and H. HU8 as you do that diagonal line up to the numbers, and you can sort of GY7. I mean U and Y. There, I don't know what you call that. The letters can phonically identical to the words, you know. So 7, yeah, that's important as well. We have to realize that 7 now is actually an unlucky number, which makes more sense to me now when I think about 9/11. You know, in terms of that ritual or that symbolic presentation, where most likely nobody died unless there was some accident on set. The only way, unless there was a mass accident on set or something, and then a few people might have died, but otherwise no one died. But we're told that 343 firefighters died, and that's 777, 7 times 7 times 7. Wasn't it interesting then as well? I'm just thinking about it. It's the sign for, this is the biblical Hebrew, that's the sign for dodo. I was asking Isa, had he any comment to make on that? And he said he had no comment to make at the minute. Isa Mahalski, 77. So 777. 777 is 343. And 343 firefighters were said to have died on 9/11. So obviously bad luck associated with that number. When you move forward to 777 in London, so 7th of the 7th, 2007, or 2005, and 2 and 5 is 7, then you had 52 deaths. So the full deck again. So it's all interconnected, all planned, timed out perfectly, with an end date in mind. And I said the end date is 4/20. One other thing I wanted to mention. Patricia and Mark, I keep saying it for the last three shows outside of yesterday's secret show. I say definitively, the last 3 shows they opened up in direct reference to what I have been discovering here. With first of all with the fake mustache, which was a reference to Paul, the Walrus's Paul. Excuse me. The following week with the yellow T-shirt, with one hand, one sleeve, and one sleeveless, which was, I decoded that with the hidden hand and the Magic and Mystery Tour. And then the following week where Patricia was almost naked, I guess, with the same kind of yellow top. But I just took that to be that the truth is exposed, you know. And Mark had no hat, so he said he didn't have a hat because he washed his hair that day. I look upon that as just taking your hat off for someone. Yeah, I really do, you know. So this week, I just looked briefly. They were out and about visiting some. Excuse me, it's audible. Oh, yeah, they were visiting some aeronautical center, flying center, and I was happy to find out that the date that they chose for it was the 8th of the 8th. So we had already revealed that everything revealed about the hidden hand and the 8/8 and the dodo connection. So maybe 4 weeks in a row, you know, my ducks, all my dodos in a row. So that was interesting as well. Let me move on to Alice in Wonderland. And listen, I haven't even got into chat now, but yeah, you know, just take it with a pinch of salt, I guess, just for a while, see how it goes. I just don't know what's the best way to approach anything anymore like this, and I don't think you should be giving it too much energy anyway in the first place. Okay, let me start reading chapter 7. And I encourage everyone to pay attention, because this is a puzzle which involves all of us. I would say, including the bowler antagonist. I will have to wonder how much you do know. You know, obviously you do know something, but I wonder how much you do know. And if you don't know beyond a certain point, well, then this all applies to us, to you as well, I should think. It's hard to make any judgments. We're trying to make any judgments about anybody at this stage, because we do not know the ultimate motivations. We've come along a path, and everyone is on their own path, and it is sort of a different stage now. So Here we go. I've been talking about the lion in terms of Leo. Our current leader is Leo Varadkar. All chosen. He's a gay man. So when everyone else is I'm going to use the term loosely, at the dignitaries meeting, all the country's representatives, there's Leo representing Ireland with his husband. You know, he made a fucking arse of the health service. It's all a joke. It's all a joke. But they're all put in place for a reason, and the reason is now. So I don't think he's put in place with the name Leo for no good reason. And so also the same with Donald Trump. We decoded Donald Trump to be 420. D is 4, T is 20. And I also said that he was chosen to be president now since the 9/11 hoax. So I'm going to call it a hoax. It was a changing. It was a ritual. It was a sort of a momentous. What would you call it? A changing of the age, sort of a countdown. You know, so we're in the 10 at the minute anyway. We aim to get to 11. That's where we're getting to 11. But yeah, we're in the 10 at the minute, and Donald Trump's middle name happens to be John, which is the 10th letter, which is the X. So double meaning, the X. We're in the 10. 10 is 1-0, so we're still in that time of division. But we're getting to unification again, and X also marks the spot, so that's giving us another little clue. Okay. I expect chapter 11 will hold some goodies. Chapter 7, yeah, I never look upon 7 the same way again. Chapter 7, the lion and the unicorn. The next moment, soldiers came running through the wood, at first in 2s and 3s, then 10 and 20 together, and at last in such crowds that they seemed to fill the whole forest. Alice got behind a tree for fear of being run over and watched them go by. She thought that in all her life she had never seen soldiers so uncertain on their feet. They were always tripping over something or other, and whenever one went down, several more always fell over him, so that the ground was soon covered with little heaps of men. Then came the horses. Having 4 feet, these managed rather better than the foot soldiers, but even they stumbled now and then. And it seemed to be a regular rule that whenever a horse stumbled, the rider fell off instantly. The confusion got worse every moment, and Alice was glad to get out of the wood into an open place, where she found the White King seated on the ground, busily writing in his memorandum book. "I've sent them all," the king cried in a tone of delight on seeing Alice. Did you happen to meet any soldiers, my dear, as you came through the wood?" "Yes, I did," said Alice. "Several thousand, I should think." 4,207. That's the exact number. Okay. 4207. 420 and 7. Now, come on. That is cool, isn't it? It had to be that number. So think about how you'd write down 4,207 is 4207. And we can see that the 7 is sort of separated from the 4,200. That's 42. I just said 42 is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. We are in the time of 7. We're in the time of 7. We want to get back to 8, where we truly belong. And again, I'll stress that again. We have to be very careful moving forward. You know, something that seems like maybe the final solution might not necessarily be it. It might be all pitfalls and traps set, you know, and red herrings, no matter how far you get. But we're, you know, again, once you've got to this stage, there should be sort of clarified. The ultimate solution will be glorious and beautiful because it will be clarified from all sides. And I have a place in mind that is beautiful. So Alternate, I think, knows about it as well. So it is beautiful and it does connect everything. But yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? 4,207. That's the exact number the king said, referring to his book. I couldn't send all the horses, you know, because 2 of them are wanted in the game. And I haven't sent the 2 messengers either. They're both gone to the town. Just look along the road and tell me if you can see either of them. Okay. No, I'm just thinking about the numbers here. So we might have to do a few basic mathematical calculations if we incorporated any of these numbers into the reckoning. Just, might take away 4 here or something. Anyway, I see nobody on the road, said Alice. I only wish I had such eyes, the king remarked in a fretful tone, to be able to see nobody. And at that distance too. Why, it's as much as I can do to see real people by this light. All this was lost on Alice, who was still looking intently along the road, shading her eyes with one hand. So again, what's been stressed here is the meaning of words. We have to break, and I've talked about this in association with the legal name as well. There's no way to beat the system. There really isn't any way to beat the system. The legal name, for all it's a truth, and you have it's so difficult, it really is, but it's the truth, whether we decide to do everything about it or nothing about it. And we're so ensconced and engrossed in the system all our lives that, it seems an insurmountable burden to have to give up the legal name. But remember, the fraud is on you. Fraud is on you. You can invoke the laws of necessity. That's what they do. And they're dead entities. Even a judge, you are more powerful than the judge. He has on his wig. He has on his suit. So and that's what I'm talking about in terms of words. That's where you want to keep your words to a minimum if you ever go near a courthouse, but you also want to clarify each and every word that's been spoken to you. You do not understand anything, because you can be sure that for every meaning that you take from a word that these people will use, they will have 2 or 3 different meanings that they can choose from to their best advantage and your worst. So we need our wits about us at all times. It depends on what the meaning. Brilliant. I mean, it depends on what the meaning of the word is. Well, you tell me what the word is, or what the meaning of the word is. I bet if I went to everyone in chat there, everyone would have a different meaning. That ties in with the beast. The beast in the Bible, the number of the beast is 666. Well, we know that the number of 666 is associated with the sun, which is capital G, which is the 3 movements, separate movements of the sun, which are swirling motion, a vertical motion, a horizontal motion. So 666, could that be related to the number of the beast? Could the beast be related to the sun in some fashion? Well, yes, it could. Be east. Be east. When the church blesses you, when you had all your family down at church and the priest was preaching to you from a height. And we know that they're the church are the opposite of exactly what they say they stand for. So you think he's going to bless you with good intentions? You think the world is going to be loaded with good intentions? No, it's not. It's everything is reversed. Bless you, be less you, be less. So yeah, that's how you sort of almost curse somebody when you say that, isn't it? If you're trying to domineer them, which we know that they're well known for their domineering. So we can break words up. But the beast, beast is be east. To be east, well, what do we all look to every day to provide sustenance, growth, warmth, etc.? Well, it's the sun, isn't it? It's the yellow we live in the yellow submarine. It's the sun. So the sun always rises, well, it rises in the east for the most part. So that's your beast. Be east. To be east. Depends on what the meaning of the word is. And then actually, when you realize that this is what's going on here in the Bible, then you can read the last chapter of Revelations 22. Last 3 chapters are important. There are 4 I'm going to stretch it to. But Revelations 22 is especially revealing. Again, it just confirms everything. And I said yesterday was that, fucking hell, man. I know it's a big statement to make, but is the Bible all about the dodo? The dodo representing a true history, true story, and what we need to sort of do to wrap our brains around it, first of all, but then to progress. There is a grand puzzle going on here. They often talk about the codes within the Bible. Well, that's what I'm seeing these days. That's definitely what I'm seeing these days. And that's not being sacrilegious or blasphemous or anything like that. Again, I take it that the Bible was written in 1611, King James Bible. I take it that was the original, and then everything else was fabricated around it. You talk, well, you say, well, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in a cave, and they lasted for 2,000 years because they were in a big jar. Right, right. Well, that's a nice story, isn't it? Do you know what you should do about all of these things? The first thing you should do after any of these monumentous claims is to type in Dead Sea Scrolls hoax and see what sort of evidence is gathered there, because that's not the evidence you'll be presented with in the mainstream, you know. So you have to see what's, again, you don't just accept it into your heart as being true. You analyze it yourself. But generally, you'll tend to find, and I know you'll find that with Dead Sea Scrolls as well, much controversy regarding the authenticity of it all. So, and you'll find it the same story with everything. It's the same story with fucking everything. It's because it's all fabricated post 1598. Now, when it comes to the pyramids, I think the pyramids in Egypt were built in the mid 18th century by Napoleon. Again, long running works, but that doesn't mean that in reality, or at previous times, like the Bosnian pyramid, I think that was a reality, you know. So we have this fabricated story running sort of parallel to the real story. And indeed, we see that with the Beatles as well. We see that with the Beatles and the cover of Sgt. Pepper, where you have one set of Beatles standing next to the other. And clearly that we're dealing with one real and one fabricated set. Interesting thought occurred to me with the, if you think about that iconic picture with the, oh, I wasn't even thinking about that. Actually, that's another one to think about. You know the picture when they're walking across the zebra crossing, the black and white? I have to think about that now in the new context. But what I was thinking about was the Beetle, the Volkswagen Beetle. You remember the white Beetle with 28 if? So there we have our 2 8s, 8 8, 2 8, 28. If what? But just about the numbers. So you're going to find hidden hand, the HH, the 8 8 encoded into all of these different messages. And it is a grander game. It's a grander puzzle that's there for the solving. And that's why we're reading, let me continue on, we're reading Alice in Wonderland, which is a great story now when we think about it. Like, this is, again, it's a duality of it all, isn't it? It is a children's story in a fantastic sense. But again, it's also an adult's story, and you have to have sort of an aspect of both to appreciate the truth about in all of this. And I think that's what we're getting. That's what we're seeing anyway, and we're seeing it's important to get that. Okay. All this was lost in Alice, who was still looking intently along the road, shading her eyes with one hand. I see somebody now, she exclaimed at last, but he's coming very slowly. And what curious attitudes he goes up into. For the messenger kept skipping up and down and wriggling like an eel as he came along, with his great hands spread out like fans on either side. Not at all, said the king. He's an Anglo-Saxon messenger. And those are Anglo-Saxon attitudes. He only does them when he's happy. His name is Haika. He pronounced it so as to rhyme with mare. Okay, hair. Hair? Hayar. Hayha. Okay. We're just talking about a H, weren't we? I love my love with a H. Alice couldn't help beginning because he is happy. There we got our 2 H's, and I didn't see that now when I was just talking about the HH, but that's what I'm saying. It comes into everything. It really comes into everything. Because he is happy, I hate him with a H. Because he is hideous. Fed him with ham sandwiches and hay. His name is Hare, and he lives. He lives on the hill. He's the H man, is he? Everything about him is a H. He lives on the hill, the king remarked simply, without the least idea that he was joining in the game, while Alice was still hesitating for the name of a town beginning with H. The other messengers called Hatta. I must have 2, you know, to come and go. One to come and one to go. I beg your pardon, said Alice. It isn't respectable to beg, said the king. I only meant that I didn't understand, said Alice. Why one to come and one to go? Well, I tell you, the king repeated impatiently. I must have 2 to fetch and carry, one to fetch and one to carry. At this moment, the messenger arrived. He was far too much out of breath to say a word, and could only wave his hands about and make the most fearful faces at the poor king. This young lady loves you with an H or a H, the king said, introducing Alice in the hope of turning off the messenger's attention from himself. But it was of no use. The Anglo-Saxon attitudes only got more extraordinary every moment, while the great eyes rolled wildly from side to side. That's sort of reminiscent of the funny walk, isn't it? If you remember Monty Python, and the Department of Funny Walks. Yeah, there's another crew, Monty Python. You can be sure the hidden hands behind all of that as well. But yeah, that just reminded me of the Ministry of Funny Walks, I think it was called. You alarm me, said the king. I feel faint. Give me give me a ham sandwich. That's something like Mark Taylor would say. You alarm me. You alarm me, you flat earthers. I feel faint. Give me a ham sandwich. Give me a bucket of ham sandwiches. On which the messenger, to Alice's great amusement, opened a bag that hung around his neck and handed a sandwich to the king, who devoured it greedily. Another sandwich, said the king. There's nothing but hay left now, the messenger said, peeping into the bag. Hay, then, the king murmured in a faint whisper. Alice was glad to see that it revived him a good deal. There's nothing like eating hay when you're faint, he remarked to her as he munched away. I should think throwing cold water over you would be better, Alice suggested. Or some sal volatile. But sal volatile. Some sort of salt solution, I'm thinking, with sal. I didn't say there was nothing better, the king replied. I said there was nothing like it. Which Alice did not venture to deny. Who did you pass on the road? The king went on, holding out his hand to the messenger for some hay. Nobody, said the messenger. Quite right, said the king. This young lady saw him too. So, of course, nobody walks slower than you. I do my best. I'm an awful punist as well. If you ever met me in person, we had a drink or we're having a chat or a laugh or something, I'll just pick you up and twist your words in a sort of wordplay fashion, a pun-like fashion. But it is important, isn't it, just generally to understand the type of words we are using. Not so much so with your family and friends where everything is casual, but when you're dealing with any sort of officialdom, we know we'll use words and the power of words against you. Quite right, said the king. This young lady saw him too, so of course nobody walks slower than you. I do my best, the messenger said in a sullen tone. I'm sure nobody walks much faster than I do. He can't do that, said the king, or else he'd have been here first. However, now you've got out of breath, you may tell us what happened in the town. I'll whisper it, said the messenger, putting his hands to his mouth in the shape of a trumpet and stooping so as to get close to the king's ear. Alice was sorry for this, as she wanted to hear the news too. However, instead of whispering, he simply shouted at the top of his voice, "They're at it again!" Everything is through the looking glass. You call that a whisper, cried the poor king, jumping up and shaking himself. If you do such a thing again, I'll have you buttered. It went through and through my head like an earthquake. It would have to be a very tiny earthquake, thought Alice. Who are at it again, she ventured to ask. Why, the lion and the unicorn, of course, said the king. Fighting for the crown. Right. We know this is the emblem of England. I'm not sure. There's a distinction between England, obviously, and the United Kingdom, which is England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. But all fabricated notions, all about legal fictions, corporate entities. But in terms of England itself, the lion and unicorn feature in its coat of arms. Interesting places to look as well, isn't it? The different coat of arms of the different countries. That will be definitely interesting. You'll get the same. I think you'll get the same story told again and again. What sort of set me off on this path in the first place was the cockerel. Santa Spinachi's saying how the Gleason's map looked like a cockerel when you viewed Australia as the feet. And indeed it does. Or to expand a bit further, it looks like a raven. Looking like a blackbird or a crow or something like that. So when we think of crow 777 and 777 at least representing dodo in biblical Hebrew, is it coincidence? Is it all coincidence? At what point can we stop saying that things are coincidence? This is the question. But that would be an interesting exercise. But yeah, the cockerel is the emblem of France, national emblem of France. And I think that's a direct sort of association with the dodo, telling the same story again and again. So that's definitely one thing to look into. Fighting for the crown? Yes, to be sure, said the king. And the best of the joke is that it's my crown all the while. Let's run and see them. And they trotted off, Alice repeating to herself as she ran the words of the old song. The lion and the unicorn were fighting for the it's just unicorn, eunuch horn. Sort of what's that? An oxymoron? A eunuch horn? A eunuch can't have a horn, can he? Since he's castrated. Anyway, the lion, and of course the lion appears in the Wizard of Oz as well, along with the Tin Man and the Straw Man, or the Scarecrow. So I think everything will have two significances as well. So the lion and the unicorn were fighting for the crown. The lion beat the unicorn all around the town. Some gave them white bread, some gave them brown. Some gave them plum cake and drummed them out of town. Sorry. Does the one that wins get the crown, she asked, as well as she could, for the run was putting her quite out of breath. Dear me, no, said the king. What an idea. Would you be good enough, Alice panted out after running a little further, to stop a minute, just to get one's breath again? I'm good enough, the king said, only I'm not strong enough, you see. Only I'm not strong enough. You see, a minute goes by so fearfully quick, you might as well try to stop a bandersnatch. Alice had no more breath for talking, so they trotted on in silence till they came into sight of a great crowd, in the middle of which the lion and the unicorn were fighting. They were in such a cloud of dust that at first Alice could not make out which was which, but she soon managed to distinguish the unicorn by his horn. They placed themselves close to where Hatta, the other messenger, was standing watching the fight, with a cup of tea in one hand and a piece of bread and butter in the other. He's only just out of prison, and he hasn't finished his tea when he was sent in. Hare whispered to Alice, and he only gave them oyster shells in there. So you see, he's very hungry and thirsty. How are you, dear child? He went on, putting his arm affectionately around Hatta's neck. So we talked about the Mad Hatter as well. Okay, well, there's your direct reference. So Hatta, the Mad Hatter. Oh, okay. Well, there he has a cup of tea and bread and butter. So there's reference to the tea party in Alice in Wonderland. Now, just an interesting side, I say that IPS represents Lewis Carroll. Just type in a Google image search for Lewis Carroll, and immediately you'll say that's IPS, especially with the hair, anyway. But yeah, I also posed the question: Is Mad Mike to IPS as the Mad Hatter is to Lewis Carroll? So let's see. We didn't get much of a grasp on the Mad Hatter in the first book, so it's progress. Hatta is his name. Hatta is hat actually in Irish for hat. Hatta looked round and nodded and went on with his bread and butter. Were you happy in prison, dear child? Said Hare. Hatta looked around once more, and this time a tear or two trickled down his cheek, but not a word would he say. Speak, can't you? Hare cried impatiently, but Hatta only munched away and drank some more tea. Speak, won't you? Cried the king. How are they getting on with the fight? Hatta made a desperate effort and swallowed a large piece of bread and butter. They're getting on very well, he said in a choking voice. Each of them has been down about 37 times. Or sorry, 87 times. Okay, why 87? 8 times 7. 56, 5 and 6, 11. Then I suppose they'll bring the white bread and the brown, Alice ventured to remark. I'm waiting for him now, said Hatta. This is a bit of it as I'm eating it. There was a pause in the fight just then, and the lion and the unicorn sat down, panting, while the king called out, 10 minutes allowed for refreshment. Hare and Hatta. So here we have the hare, yeah. So I remember I said it was pronounced hare, rhyming with mare. So we have the hare and Hatta, the Mad Hatter, who they don't specifically identify as the Mad Hatter, but, you know, in the visual form we can see. So, yeah, it's just a reference of the hare and the Hatter, and who was it? The Dormouse, the March Hare and the Hatter and the Dormouse. Maybe in disguise, right? From Alice in Wonderland. Hare and Hatter set to work at once, carrying round trays of white and brown bread. Alice took a piece to taste, but it was very dry. I don't think they'll fight any more today, the king said to Hatta. Go on over the drums to begin with. And Hatta went bounding away like a grasshopper. For a minute or two, Alice stood silent, watching him. Suddenly, she brightened up. Look, 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 she cried, pointing eagerly. There's the White Queen running across the country. She came flying out of the wood over yonder. How fast those queens can run. There's some enemy after her, no doubt, the king said, without even looking round. That wood's full of them. But aren't you going to run and help her? Alice asked, very much surprised at his taking it so quietly. No use, no use, said the king. She runs so fearfully quick. You might as well try to catch a bandersnatch. But I'll make a memorandum about her, if you like. She's a dear good creature, he repeated softly to himself as he opened his memorandum book. Do you spell creature with a double E? At this moment, the unicorn sauntered by them with his hands in his pockets. I had the best of it this time, he said to the king, just glancing at him as he passed. A little, the king replied rather nervously. You shouldn't have run him through with your horn, you know. It didn't hurt him, the unicorn said carelessly, and he was going on with his eye when his eye happened to fall upon Alice. He turned round instantly and stood for some time looking at her with an air of the deepest disgust. What is this? He said at last. This is a child, Hare replied eagerly, coming in front of Alice to introduce her and spreading out both his hands towards her in an Anglo-Saxon attitude. We only found it today. It's as large as life, and twice as natural. I always thought they were fabulous monsters, said the unicorn. Is it alive? It can talk, said Hare solemnly. The unicorn looked dreamily at Alice and said, Talk, child. Alice could not help her lips curling into a smile as she began. Do you know, I always thought unicorns were fabulous monsters too. I never saw one alive before. Well, now that we have seen each other, said the unicorn, if you'll believe in me, I'll believe in you. Is that a bargain? Yes, if you like, said Alice. Come, fetch out the plum cake, old man, the unicorn went on, turning from her to the king. None of your brown bread for me. Certainly, certainly, the king muttered, and beckoned to Hare. Open the bag, he whispered. Quick, not that one. That's full of hay. Hare took a large cake out of the bag and gave it to Alice to hold, while he got out a dish and a carving knife. How they all came out of it, Alice couldn't guess. It was just like a conjuring trick, she thought. The lion had joined them while this was going on. He looked very tired and sleepy, and his eyes were half shut. What's this, he said, blinking lazily at Alice, and speaking in a deep, hollow tone that sounded like the tolling of a great bell. Ah, what is this now? The unicorn cried eagerly. You'll never guess. I couldn't. The lion looked at Alice wearily. Are you animal, or vegetable, or mineral? He said, yawning at every other word. It's a fabulous monster, the unicorn cried out before Alice could reply. Then hand round the plum cake, monster, the lion said, lying down and putting his chin on his paws. And sit down, both of you, to the king and the unicorn. Fair play with the cake, you know. King was evidently very uncomfortable at having to sit down between the two great creatures, but there was no other place for him. What a fight we might have for the crown now, the unicorn said, looking slyly up at the crown, which the poor king was nearly shaking off his head. He trembled so much. I should win easily, said the lion. I'm not so sure of that, said the unicorn. Why, I beat you all round the town, you chicken, the lion replied angrily, half getting up as he spoke. Here the king interrupted to prevent the quarrel going on. He was very nervous, and his voice quite quivered. All round the town, he said. That's a good long way. Do you go by the old bridge or the marketplace? You get the best view by the old bridge. I'm sure I don't know, the lion growled out as he lay down again. There was too much dust to see anything. What a time the monster is cutting up that cake. Alice had seated herself on the bank of a little brook with the great dish on her knees and was sawing away diligently with the knife. It's very provoking, she said, in reply to the lion. She was getting quite used to being called the monster. I've cut several slices already, but they always join on again. You don't know how to manage looking-glass cakes, the unicorn remarked. Hand it round first and cut it afterwards. This sounded nonsense, but Alice very obediently got up and carried the dish around, and the cake divided itself into 3 pieces as she did so. Yeah, it has to be 3, isn't it? 3 is the magic number. 3 is the magic lumber. Now cut it up, said the lion, and she returned to her place with the empty dish. I say, this isn't fair, cried the unicorn, as Alice sat with the knife in her hand, very much puzzled how to begin. The monster had given the lion twice as much as me. Has given the lion twice as much as me. She's kept none for herself, anyhow, said the lion. Do you like plum cake, monster? But before Alice could answer him, the drums began. Where the noise came from, she couldn't make out. The air seemed full of it, and it rang through and through her head till she felt quite deafened. She started to her feet and sprang across the little brook in her terror. Here we have the 6 X's again. 6 X's, 6 X's. Okay, well, again, just seemingly dividing it in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a sentence. Anyway, and had just time to see the lion and the unicorn rise to their feet with angry looks at being interrupted in their feast before she dropped to her knees and put her hands over her ears, vaguely trying to shut out the dreadful uproar. If that doesn't drum them out of town, she thought to herself, nothing ever will. Very strange, isn't it? I'm sure there'll be lots of thoughts on what exactly the lion represents and what exactly the unicorn represents. But I don't have too many thoughts on that at the minute. What is this picture here? All right, these are all the soldiers collapsing over one another. Again, I take it this is all the original artwork. And just like we found the face underneath the dodo's wing in the original artwork, which is what I take it, it wasn't to be found everywhere. So I wonder how many places actually feature the face of Paul is dead underneath the dodo's wing. It's certainly in the original anyway. I don't think they'll be taking that out soon. Yeah, but very strange, isn't it? Once again, be sure it's all encoding something or other. So the 420 was great there, 4,207. And also the HH shortly afterwards. It's all very strange, isn't it? Yeah, so I'm just going to read on because for me, it's not about decoding it. When I look a bit deeper into the lion and the unicorn, and you can be sure they're all connected with the same grander story, you know. Then it will sort of all slot into place. But there will definitely be more people not much more knowledgeable in that than I am. Let's just look at another picture. Okay. Okay, let me just move on. Let me move on. I don't have much to say about that. What's this, chapter 8? So that will leave 9, 10, 11, and 12, 4 chapters. So I might just finish this and quit the chat. I hope I can anticipate chat is an absolute mess, but yeah, whatever is going on, don't let it get you too much anyway. Maybe I should put I should have put a limiter on it, you know, slow mode, maybe 5-second or 10-second limiter. But listen, I hope for the best and expect the worst, maybe. But it's only going to be casual reading tonight anyway. It's my own invention, chapter 8. So again, we have 8, the significant number. So there might be something significant contained within this chapter. After a while, the noise seemed gradually to die away till all was dead silence, and Alice lifted up her head in some alarm. There was no one to be seen, and her first thought was that she must have been dreaming about the lion and the unicorn and those queer Anglo-Saxon messengers. However, there was a great dish still lying at her feet, and while she had tried to cut the plum cake, on which she had tried to cut the plum cake. So I wasn't dreaming after all, she said to herself, unless we're all part of the same dream. Only I do hope it's my dream and not the Red King's. I don't like belonging to another person's dream, she went on in a rather complaining tone. I've a great mind to go and wake him and see what happens. So row, row, row your boat merrily down the stream. Gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream. At this moment, her thoughts were interrupted by a loud shouting of "Ahoy, ahoy, check!" and a knight, dressed in crimson armour, came galloping down upon her. brandishing a great club. Just as he reached her, the horse suddenly stopped. "You're my prisoner," the knight cried as he tumbled off his horse. Startled as she was, Alice was more frightened for him than for herself at that moment, and watched him with some anxiety as he mounted again. As soon as he was comfortable in the saddle, he began once more. "You're my but—" Here another voice broke in. "Ahoy, ahoy, check!" And Alice looked round in some surprise for the new enemy. This time it was a white knight. He drew up at Alice's side and tumbled off his horse just as the red knight had done. Then he got on again, and the two knights sat and looked at each other for some time without speaking. Alice looked from one to the other in some bewilderment. "She's my prisoner, you know," the red knight said at last. "Yes, but then I came and rescued her," the white knight replied. "Well, you must fight for her then," said the red knight as he took up his helmet, which hung from the saddle and was... oh, fuck it. I'm just after having one of those deja vu moments. Okay, let me... you know, one of those vague glimpses of having this thought or some sort of intricate thought being involved with this scene or setup before. Just got one of those there briefly. Maybe it will come together in more coherent fashion in a bit. Anyway, "Well, we must fight for her then," said the red knight. And he took up his helmet, which hung from the saddle, was something the shape of a horse's head, and he put it on. "You'll observe the rules of battle, of course," the white knight remarked, putting on his helmet too. "I always do," said the red knight, and they began banging away at each other with such fury that Alice got behind the tree to be out of the way of the blows. "I wonder now what the rules of battle are," she said to herself, as she watched the fight, timidly peeping out from her hiding place. "One rule seems to be that if one knight hits the other, he knocks him off his horse, and if he misses, he tumbles off himself. And another rule seems to be that they hold their clubs with their arms, as if they were Punch and Judy. What a noise they make when they tumble! Just like a whole set of fire irons falling into the fender. And how quiet the horses are. They let them get on and off, just as if they were tables." Another rule of battle that Alice had not noticed seemed to be that they always fell on their heads, and the battle ended with their both falling off in this way, side by side. When they got up again, they shook hands, and then the red knight mounted and galloped off. "It was a glorious victory, wasn't it?" said the white knight, as he came up panting. "I don't know," said Alice doubtfully. "I don't want to be anyone's prisoner. I want to be a queen." "So you will, when you've crossed the next brook," said the white knight. "I'll see you safe to the end of the wood, and then I must go back, you know. That's the end of my move." So she must fight for every square, Alice. Every step of the way, there's a different challenge facing us. And the stream seems to be the dividing line between the different tiers in the chessboard. "Thank you very much," said Alice. "May I help you off with your helmet?" It was evidently more than he could manage by himself. However, she managed to shake him out of it at last. "Now one can breathe more easily," said the knight, putting back his shaggy hair with both hands and turning his gentle face and large, mild eyes to Alice. She told she had never seen such a strange-looking soldier in all her life. He was dressed in tin armour, which seemed to fit him very badly, and he had a queer-shaped little deal box fastened across his shoulders, upside down, and with the lid hanging open. Alice looked at it with great curiosity. "I see you're admiring my little box," the knight said in a friendly tone. "It's my own invention to keep clothes and sandwiches in. You see, I carry it upside down so that the rain can't get in." "But the things can get out," Alice gently remarked. "Do you know the lid's opened?" "I didn't know it," the knight said. A shade of vexation passed over his face. "Then all the things must have fallen out, and the box is no use without them." He fastened it as he spoke, and was just going to throw it into the bushes when a sudden thought seemed to strike him, and he hung it carefully on a tree. "Can you guess why I did that?" he said to Alice. Alice shook her head. "In hopes some bees may make a nest in it. Then I should get the honey." But you've got a beehive, or something like one, fastened to the saddle," said Alice. "Yes, it's a very good beehive," the knight said in a discontented tone. "One of the best kind, but not a single bee has come near it yet. And the other thing is a mouse trap. I suppose the mice keep the bees out, or the bees keep the mice out. I don't know which." "I was wondering what the mouse trap is for," said Alice. "It isn't very likely there would be any mice on the horse's back." "Not very likely, perhaps," said the knight, "but if they do come, I don't choose to have them running all about. You see," he went on after a pause, "it's as well to be provided for everything. That's the reason the horse has all those anklets around his feet." "What are they for?" Alice asked in a tone of great curiosity. "To guard against the bites of sharks. The knight replied, "It's an invention of my own. And now help me on. I'll go with you to the end of the wood. What's that dish for?" "It's meant for the plum cake," said Alice. "We'd better take it with us," the knight said. "It'll come in handy if we find any plum cake. Help me to get it into this bag." This took a long time to manage, though Alice held the bag open very carefully because the knight was so very awkward in putting in the dish. The first two or three times that he tried, he fell in himself instead. "It's rather a tight fit, you see," he said, as they got it in at last. "There are so many candlesticks in the bag," and he hung it to the saddle, which was already loaded with bunches of carrots and fire irons and many other things. "Hope you've got your hair well fastened on," he continued as they set off. "Only in the usual way," Alice said, smiling. "That's hardly enough," he said anxiously. "You see, the wind is so very strong here, it's as strong as soup." "Have you invented a plan for keeping the hair from being blown off?" Alice inquired. "Not yet," said the knight, "but I've got a plan for keeping it from falling off. I should like to hear it very much." "First, take an upright stick," said the knight. "Then you make your hair creep up it, like a fruit tree. Now, the reason hair falls off is because it hangs down. Things never fall upwards, you know. It's a plan of my own invention. You may try it if you like." It didn't sound a comfortable plan, Alice thought, and for a few minutes she walked on in silence, puzzling over the idea, and every now and then stopping to help the poor knight, who certainly was not a good rider. Whenever the horse stopped, which it did very often, he fell off in front, and whenever it went on again, which it generally did rather suddenly, he fell off behind. Otherwise, he kept on pretty well, except that he had a habit of now and then falling off sideways, and as he generally did this on the side on which Alice was walking, she soon found it was the best plan not to walk quite close to the horse. "I'm afraid you've not had much practice in riding," she ventured to say, as she was helping him up from his fifth tumble. The knight looked very much surprised, and a little offended at the remark. "What makes you say that?" he said, as he scrambled back into the saddle, keeping hold of Alice's hair with one hand to save himself from falling over on the other side. "Because people don't fall off quite so often when they've had much practice." "I've had plenty of practice," the knight said very gravely. "Plenty of practice." Alice could think of nothing better to say than "indeed," but she said it as heartily as she could. They went on a little way in silence after this, the knight with his eyes shut, muttering to himself, and Alice watching anxiously for the next tumble. "The great art of riding," the knight suddenly began in a loud voice, waving his right arm as he spoke, "is to keep" here the sentence ended as suddenly as it had begun, as the knight fell heavily on the top of his head exactly in the path where Alice was walking. She was quite frightened this time, and said in an anxious tone as she picked him up, "I hope no bones are broken." "None to speak of," the knight said, as if he didn't mind breaking 2 or 3 of them. "The great art of riding, as I was saying, is to keep your balance properly, like this, you know." He let go of the bridle and stretched out both his hands to show Alice what he meant, and this time he fell flat on his back, right under the horse's feet. "Plenty of practice," he went on repeating, all the time that Alice was getting him on his feet again. "Plenty of practice." "It's too ridiculous," cried Alice, losing all her patience this time. "You ought to have a wooden horse on wheels, that you ought." "Does that kind go smoothly?" the knight asked in a tone of great interest, clasping his arms around the horse's neck as he spoke, just in time to save himself from tumbling off again. "Much more smoothly than a live horse," Alice said, with a little scream of laughter, in spite of all she could do to prevent it. "I'll get one," the knight said thoughtfully to himself. "One or two, several." There was a short silence after this, and then the knight went on again. "I'm a great hand at inventing things. Now, I dare say you noticed the last time you picked me up that I was looking rather thoughtful." "You were a little grave," said Alice. "Well, just then I was inventing a new way of getting over a gate. Would you like to hear it?" "Very much indeed," said Alice politely. "I'll tell you how I came to think of it," said the knight. "You see, I said to myself, the only difficulty is with the feet. The head is high enough already. Now, first I put my head on the top of the gate, then the head's high enough, then I stand on my head, then the feet are high enough, you see, then I'm over, you see." "Yes, I suppose you'd be over when that was done," Alice said thoughtfully. "But don't you think it would be rather hard?" "I haven't tried it yet," the knight said gravely, "so I can't tell for certain, but I'm afraid it would be a little hard." He looked so vexed at the idea that Alice changed the subject hastily. "What a curious helmet you've got," she said cheerfully. "Is that your invention too?" The knight looked down proudly at his helmet, which hung from the saddle. "Yes," he said, "but I've invented a better one than that, like a sugar loaf. When I used to wear it, if I fell off the horse, it always touched the ground directly, so I had a very little way to fall. You see." But there was the danger of falling into it, to be sure. That happened to me once. And the worst of it was, before I could get out of it again, the other white knight came up and put it on. He thought it was his own helmet. Jesus. The knight looked. Now let me just say, if you look at Jarface's solution to Sergeant Pepper's, which is a partial solution, he incorporates all of this into his sort of pathway through the different males. He identifies Paul as being the queen, I think, and Ringo being the knight, one of them being the bishop. And again, it's coherent, and it's a sort of a cogent, logical path that he follows as well. And of course, it is a solution, but it's only a partial solution because he hasn't taken the dodo into account. So all of this stuff is dealt. So if you think this is all just vague and it doesn't tie into anything, no, it definitely does. It definitely does. Anyone wants that link again, I can post that. The knight looked so solemn about it that Alice did not dare to laugh. "I'm afraid you must have hurt him," she said in a trembling voice, "being on the top of his head." "I had to kick him, of course," the knight said very seriously, and then he took the helmet off again. "But it took hours and hours to get me out. I was as fast as lightning, you know." "But that's a different kind of fastness," Alice objected. The knight shook his head. "It was all kinds of fastness with me, I can assure you," he said. He raised his hands in some excitement as he said this, and instantly rolled out of the saddle and fell headlong into the ditch. Alice ran to the side of the ditch to look for him. She was rather startled by the fall, and as for some time he had kept on very well, and she was afraid that he really was hurt this time. However, she could see nothing but the soles of his feet, and she was much relieved to hear that he was talking on in his usual voice. "All kinds of fastness," he repeated, "but it was careless of him to put another man's helmet on, with the man in it too." "How can you go on talking so quietly, head downwards?" Alice asked, as she dragged him out by the feet and laid him in a heap on the bank. The knight looked surprised at the question. "That doesn't matter where my body happens to be," he said. "My mind goes on working all the same. In fact, the more head downwards I am, the more I keep inventing new things. Now, the cleverest thing of the sort that I ever did," he went on after a pause, "was inventing a new pudding during the meat course." "In time to have it cooked for the next course," said Alice. "Well, that was quick work, certainly." "Well, not the next course," the knight said in a slow, thoughtful tone. "No, certainly not the next course." "Then it would have to be the next day. I suppose you wouldn't have two pudding courses in one dinner." "Well, not the next day," the knight repeated as before. "Not the next day. In fact," he went on, holding his head down and his voice getting lower and lower, "I don't believe that pudding was ever cooked. In fact, I don't believe that pudding ever will be cooked. And yet, it was a very clever pudding to invent." "What did you mean it to be made of?" Alice asked, hoping to cheer him up, for the poor knight seemed quite low-spirited about it. "It began with blotting paper," the knight answered with a groan. "That wouldn't be very nice, I'm afraid." "Not very nice alone," he interrupted quite eagerly, "but you have no idea what a difference it makes, mixing it with other things such as gunpowder and sealing wax. And here I must leave you." They had just come to the end of the wood. Alice could only look puzzled. She was thinking of the pudding. "You are sad," the knight said in an anxious tone. "Let me sing you a song to comfort you." "Is it very long?" Alice asked, for she had heard a good deal of poetry that day. "It's long," said the knight, "but it's very, very beautiful. Every one that hears me sing it, either it brings the tears into their eyes or else." "Or else what?" said Alice, for the knight had made a sudden pause. "Or else it doesn't, you know." The name of the song is called Haddock's Eyes. Lovely. "Oh, that's the name of the song, is it?" Alice said, trying to feel interested. "No, you don't understand," the knight said, looking a little vexed. "That's what the name is called. The name really is The Aged, Aged Man." "Then I ought to have said, that's what the song is called," Alice corrected herself. "No, you oughtn't. That's quite another thing. The song is called Ways and Means. That's only what it's called, you know." "Well, what is the song then?" said Alice, who was by this time completely bewildered. "I was coming to that," the knight said. "The song really is A Sitting on a Gate, and the tune's my own invention." So saying, he stopped his horse and let the reins fall on his neck. Then, slowly beating time with one hand and with a faint smile lighting up his gentle, foolish face, as if he enjoyed the music of his song, he began. Of all the strange things that Alice saw in her journey through the looking glass, this was the one that she always remembered most clearly. Years afterwards, she could bring the whole scene back again as if it had been only yesterday. The mild, so this might be an important scene as well. So we have yesterday here with the Beatles song, the mild blue eyes and kindly smile of the night, the setting sun gleaming through his hair and shining on his armor in a blaze of light that quite dazzled her, the horse quietly moving about with the reins hanging loose on its neck, cropping the grass at her feet, and the black shadows of the forest behind. All this she took in like a picture as, with one hand shading her eyes, she leant against a tree, watching the strange pair and listening in a half-dream to the melancholy music of the song. But the tune isn't his own invention, she said to herself. It's, I give thee all, I can no more. She stood and listened very attentively, but no tears came to her eyes. I don't know that if I knew the air of "I give thee all, I can no more," I'd give it a blast, but I don't know. So I'll tell thee everything I can. I'll tell thee everything I can. There's little to relate. I saw an aged man a sitting on a gate. "Who are you, aged man?" I said, "and how is it you live?" And his answer trickled through my head like water through a sieve. He said, "I look for butterflies that sleep among the wheat. I make them into mutton pies and sell them in the street. I sell them unto men," he said, who sail on stormy seas. I know, and that's the way I get my bread, a trifle, if you please. But I was thinking of a plan to dye one's whiskers green, and always use so large a fan that they could not be seen. So having no reply to give to what the old man said, I cried, "Come, tell me how you live," and thumped him on the head. His accent mild took up the tale. He said, "I go my ways, and when I find a mountain rill, I set it in a blaze. And thence they make a stuff they call Rowland's Macassar oil. Yet twopence halfpenny is all they give me for my toil. But I was thinking of a way to feed oneself on batter, so go on from day to day, getting a little fatter." I shook him well from side to side until his face was blue. "Come, tell me how you live," I cried, "and what it is you do." He said, "I hunt for haddock's eyes among the heather bright, and work them into waistcoat buttons in the silent night. And these I do not sell for gold or coin of silvery shine, but for a copper halfpenny, and that will purchase 9. I sometimes dig for buttered rolls, or set limed twigs for crabs. I sometimes search the grassy the grassy knolls." Was that ringing any bells? Grassy knoll. I sometimes search the. What did he say the name of that song was called again? Actually, if there was another connection to JFK with that, that'd be cool. What was the name? Ways and Means. The aged man. Okay, sitting on a great haddock's eyes, sitting on a gate. Ways and Means. Okay. Where was I? Sometimes search for grassy knolls for wheels of handsome cabs. That's the way he gave a wink by which I get my wealth. Very gladly will I drink your honour's noble health. I heard him then, for I had just completed my design to keep the Menai bridge from rust by boiling it in wine. I thanked him much for telling me the way he got his wealth, but chiefly for his wish that he might drink my noble health. And now, if e'er by chance I put my fingers into glue, or madly squeeze a right-hand foot into a left-hand shoe, or if I drop upon my toe a very heavy weight, I weep, for it reminds me so of that old man I used to know, whose look was mild, whose speech was slow, whose hair was whiter than the snow, whose face was very like a crow, with eyes like cinders all aglow, who seemed distracted with his woe, who rocked his body to and fro, and muttered mumblingly and low, as if his mouth were full of dough, who snorted like a buffalo that summer evening long ago, as sitting on a gate. It's mad. It's mad. Okay, as the knight sang the last words of the ballad, he gathered up the reins and turned his horse's head along the road by which they had come. "You've only a few yards to go," he said, "down the hill and over that little brook, and then you'll be a queen. But you'll stay and see me off first," he added as Alice turned with an eager look in the direction to which he pointed. "I shan't be long. You'll wait and wave your handkerchief when I get to that turn in the road. I think it'll encourage me, you see." "Of course I'll wait," said Alice. "And thank you very much for coming so far, and for the song. I liked it very much." "I hope so," the knight said doubtfully, "but you didn't cry so much as I thought you would." So they shook hands. He didn't cry so much. And so they shook hands, and then the knight rode slowly away into the forest. It won't take long to see him off, I expect, Alice said to herself as she stood watching him. There he goes, right on his, it's like father dead. There he goes, right in his head as usual. However, he gets on pretty easily. He gets on again pretty easily. That comes of having so many things hung around the horse. So she went on talking to herself as she watched the horse walking leisurely along the road and the knight tumbling off, first on one side and then the other. After the fourth or fifth tumble, he reached the turn, and then she waved her handkerchief to him and waited until he was out of sight. I hope it encouraged him, she said, as she turned to run down the hill. And now for the last brook, and to be a queen. How grand it sounds. A very few steps brought her to the edge of the brook. The 8th square at last, she cried as she bounded across, and threw herself down to rest on a lawn as soft as moss, with little flower beds dotted about it here and there. Oh, how glad I am to get here. And what is this on my head? She exclaimed in a tone of dismay. She put her hands up to something very heavy that fitted tight around all her head. But how can it have got there without my knowing it? She said to herself as she lifted it up and set it onto her lap to make out what it could possibly be. It was a golden crown. Right. Chapter 8. So this is the thing that, so a little clue there is this is the one that Alice, this was the one that she always remembered most clearly, and significant to come from chapter 8 as well. So that would be, again, I'm not, nothing is occurring. I'm not sort of making head nor tail of it all at the second, but I'm surprised to see that Alice has reached square 8 so soon. We're only in we're in chapter 8, I guess, but we still have 4 chapters to go. So the adventure continues. The Dark Knight, the Knights of Neh. I am the Knight of Neh. So now, again, Holy Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the Knights of Neh, Dark Knights of Neh. To be sure, it's all connected in some way, some form or fashion back to this. It's my true thoughts on it, and yeah, it all bears decoding. I'm going through it pretty scantily now. If anything occurs, I'll say it, but I'm still trying to sort of take a step back. We have solved a lot of the puzzle, so we don't need to get too deeply into all of it. But it will serve us to read it anyway. That's the way I feel, and that's indeed why I'm reading this. I'm just going to take a little cigarette break for a second and go into the chat for a few minutes, hoping everything is grand. This is Don Quixote type of figure, right? And we have, of course, knight. We have a dual knight. A chessboard. Yeah, chessboard piece has a knight as well, which moves in L's, which is significant as well. Let me go up to look at a 7 here. 7 is an L. We have a 7 here, an L. If you invert it and flip it, you have an L. And Alice does mention something significant about an L in an earlier chapter, so we can bear that in mind. Just will remind, it's not telling anybody what to do, because everyone is at a different stage, but I'm certainly trying to keep it simple. I'm trying to keep it, keep it basic, keep it sort of fundamental, because to the stage we've got, we have so many different keys that it won't be very difficult at all. And it's not that everything is so complicated in itself. You must have solved or associated previous aspects of the puzzle and gathered the key to move forward, So it's not that each key is particularly difficult to find or solve, but the whole puzzle as a whole, you have to sort of start it from square one, really. You can't just jump in square 5 and have everything make sense. That's not just the way it works. It can work. So yeah. So the clumsy knight, yeah. in one sense, this is sort of a grand game of chess we're involved in. We can see by the nature of this puzzle. I mean, there's no denying that this puzzle is real and live at this stage. Absolutely no denying it. I mean, you can go to the biggest magazine worldwide and see this puzzle encoded in its front page in terms of The Economist. And you can see us coming out with the solution, and Alice in Wonderland is featured heavily in it. So, yeah, I should think no matter where you're at, no matter what side of the fence you're at or pretending to be at, this is pertinent to you and to all of us. That's the way I look upon Alice's name. Well, let me just read out something that someone else wrote. Let me find his name. Anyone wants to come in for a chat, just let me know here. I won't stay on too long, maybe another half hour. Shit, I have so many notes on the dodo. Let me just say thank you to Morky Love, who made a video dedicated to me. I'm very honored. Like, I mean, it's all got to do with the dodo as well. And if you're listening, Morky, if you go to this, I'm just looking for something here. So 1 second. Yeah, but I'm very grateful for that. And there are many different representations of the dodo. Going back to day one, obviously, clearly, one particular representation we're looking for is the official representation. That'll be the one that'll be used in terms of the flat Earth map. But you showed a picture of the dodo from Alice in Wonderland, and I noticed it didn't have the head beneath it. It didn't have Paul is dead, Paul McCartney's head with the walrus moustache beneath it in its representation. So. Yeah, that's. Yeah, I'm just looking for something here. I can't find it, for fuck's sake. Yeah, that's to be expected. So it's only by go back to the original artwork or the official representation that I should think you'd find this dodo's head. But you can just the link I'm using here is. I can't find it. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Yeah. So sorry. The link I'm using here is. I have no idea what this is about as well. The Sabian assembly. And I take it these are the original artworks. They have to be, like, you know, I can't see why they wouldn't be. And yeah, if you go into the Sabian assembly, it's just sabian.org, and you'll find, just type in Alice in Wonderland, and there you'll see chapter 3, the picture of Paul, the face underneath the dodo's wing. But yeah, once again, thank you very much for that. And you know, this is really is a story that concerns us all and connects us all, and it's all of our story. So we should be all brushing up. Let me just go into chat. Not go into chat. Let me just have a cigarette. Go into chat then, and hopefully everything is cool. Anyone wants to come in for a chat, just let me know. I'll see you in a bit. I hear that train a-comin', it's a-rollin' round the bend. Lord, I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, time keeps dragging on, while the train keeps on rolling down to San Antone. When I was just a young boy, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever mess with guns. But I shot a man in Remo just to watch him die. When I hear that whistle blow, I hang my head and cry. Well, I bet there's rich folks eating in some fancy dining car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. But I knew I had it coming. I knew I can't be free. But those people keep on moving, and that's what tortures me. Well, if they freed me from this prison, if that railroad train was mine, I bet I'd move it on a little further down the line, all far from Folsom Prison. That's where I long to stay. And I'd let that lonesome whistle blow my blues away. Just a quick one there. Lonesome Prison Blues, Johnny Cash. Another man put front and center for us, for our education, I guess, in one sense. So let me go into chat. Anyone welcome to come in? Otherwise, I'll just give a few brief shout outs, say hello, and read a few comments. I guess, in one sense. There you go. So it seems to be coming through grand. How's everything? Oh, full of trolls, Scouser, is it? Oh gosh. Anyone want the link, first of all? Yeah, there seems to be. Yeah, it must be running very smoothly. There's no sort of deleted messages or no banned accounts or anything. It's a lesson anyway, isn't it, Scouser? I mean, yeah, I don't think anyone should be. I don't think anyone should be banned for. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, you have Mark Taylor in here talking a load of shit about me today, and fair enough. I mean, we're well used to it. But I could easily ban him. But no, I don't. Yeah, wouldn't dream of it. Wouldn't dream of it unless he became abusive hearing, like to someone else. Then again, that's not. Check his. Fanny Lance says, chat is getting out of hand with abusive trolls. Pass you the wrench, Fanny, is that? That'd be a good one. Yeah. No, I think it's fine for tonight, is it? I mean, we can all learn a thing or two and not take it too seriously. So anyone fancy a link or a little chat or anything like that? Yeah, I don't get the chat too often with other people, which is fine as well. I'm not sure. I'm not sure for the most part what people are making of all of this, and I'm not too bothered by it as well. I think like the dodo is just a matter of time before it catches on, as it was always designed to do. But everything I've certainly found myself anyway, it's always pointed us in the same direction. If you want to talk about anything else, I don't mind. I can pretty much talk about anything. Let me talk about the moon for a second. People have been reporting just how bright moon is. I also noticed the same thing around Christmas time with the stars as well. I say that everything is associated with the sun. So if the sun has increased in frequency, then the reflections will also reflect that, which is why we're seeing a brighter moon. As I said, you might get to see stars for a couple of hours, maybe in the dead of night at about 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. The minute the sun starts to come around again, stars are gone. But for the most part, you don't see stars anymore, which would make sense as well if the sort of the light intensity levels have gone up. So that's my thoughts on that. But no, thank you, Morky. That was a lovely gesture, and I appreciate it. And I know that you're, well, I don't know anything about many people, but I know some people are taking the idea seriously. And I have many. And if you wanted any links, the best thing to do would probably be me to do a video, just go through everything. Like, there's so much stuff there, really. But if you wanted if you were interested in any pertinent aspect of the dodo, or you weren't quite sure how it was something connected to something else, you just ask me, and I surely have a link there which is leading you in the right direction, you know. So everything is backed up. Everything is well, one of the best finds to bring it all together was the fact that Mauritius and the dodo was found with giant turtles. I knew there'd be an elephant connection thrown in there somewhere in the literature, in the narrative. And indeed, it came up with the elephant bird, who one of the elephant bird eggs went up for auction in Christie's or something like that. Well, it had to be Christie's, and yeah, so that's the elephant connection. So you have the turtle, the elephants on the back, and then you have the dodo, which is the flat Earth map on top. So it's stuff like that. You know, I have all of those different links. I must have about 50, 60 different links, which are all some are more important than others, but they're all substantial, and they all have something direct to offer regarding the dodo itself and the encoded nature of it. Cat's Eyes, the demonic Nazi mod masturbates with an inverted cross as she bans people in chat. Well, I guess if you say so, it's true, right? Don't know anything about that. I mean, what do we know about anyone, even at this stage? What do we know? The one thing I will say, look, it's easy enough to identify the baller antagonist actors like Mark Taylor. These are easy enough. But you have to remember that there's so many flat Earth actors as well on the stage. We don't know the greater game here. And these are some of the soldiers, I guess, maybe that Alice encounters. Some of the battle-weary soldiers who are fighting these different corners, you know. But yeah, it's easy enough to identify the baller antagonists. Like Sir Mark Taylor here will come back again and again with the same arguments. The patience of Jove he chose, you know, about what does it matter to you, Mark, what I believe or not, you know what I mean? So there has to be some other reason that you're here. Of course, we can when we ask some of the more pressing questions regarding other conspiracies, we soon find out that we're dealing with not people who are sort of being upfront and what they say on the tin. You know, for the most part, people sing from the antagonists sing from the same hymn sheet. There's no conspiracies ever, almost, you know, and it's by this very inflexibility, I guess, that they give the game away. So we understand that this is they're not going away. So we understand that this is the nature of things. So if we want to move and progress, we can learn more from what these people won't say as opposed to what they will say. So yeah, I don't think at this stage it definitely does to get involved emotionally in any sense. Where can you go now that's safe? You know what I mean? When I say safe, I mean, yeah, that you know for sure that there's no role players there. Very difficult to know that, isn't it? And what I said about the flat Earth, you have to realize that it's. I know I won't use any negative terms. This is just the nature of the arena. There are so many flat Earth actors around as well, and you can also identify them because I mean it stands logical reason in the sense that, you know, having come to flat Earth, you would have gone through other conspiracies. So even though there's many and varied pathways that were laid out for us through the other conspiracies, should have been coming through the same with the likes of Sandy Hook, you know, and nudging you towards media fakery. You should have easily processed that and then applied what you learned to other things that were presented to us and come out that end. And if you haven't, for instance, let's just say you went down the Judy Wood route in 9/11, well, you know, if you hadn't heard the possibility of media fakery or victim fakery, then you do what is natural, which is investigate that, and then see where you come out upon on that issue, and then weigh up whatever you may have thought or the evidence that Judy Woods might bring versus the evidence presented for media fakery. And again, by any standards, you should have come out the other side and come to understand that it was a media fakery extravaganza. So that's what I'm saying. Everyone who's come to Flat Earth should have gone through all of those processes. And if they haven't, well, then it's never too late. And it shouldn't take you too long to catch up on that as well. Just type in all you need to do really, ultimately, type in 9/11 victim fakery in YouTube. Give it a consideration for 2 days, and if you find that there's ample enough evidence for a few victims, then you can, in a sense, you can extend it to the whole operation. What I will say to you is that the more you dig, the more you will find that this holds true. And we're dealing with a completely fabricated scenario. The extents of it are flabbergasting for most people. They just can't grasp that, but that's too bad. You know, that's not the truth's fault. So you have to wrap your mind around that, and you know, let it take you where you will. So once again, we can identify I call them the anti-conspiracy crew, the status quotitioners. You know, go back to trusting science. There's no conspiracies anywhere ever, and you know, you don't have to worry your little head about that. Well, that's fine. So we can recognize that and move on. But once again, I mean, it's sort of overwhelming. Mark Sargent, I talked about Mark Sargent, a pivotal player in all of this. Mark Sargent Pepper, Patricia Steer, David Weiss. You know, I just keep naming them and say that these people are actors. They're yeah, they are limited. They're gatekeepers in a sense. David Weiss was another witness to 9/11. He said he saw the buildings falling, you know, and he might have seen something, but yeah, his testimony is the Judy Wood. He went out and he bought loads of Judy Wood books and gave them out for free. So this is taking us down the wrong path, and we have to realize that. Judy Wood's fatal flaw, she says there's no planes, so therefore any of the footage that shows planes is faked and fabricated from her point of view, right? So now she analyzes the collapse sequences as if they're genuine, and you say, well, hang on, Judy, you're after realizing that, you know, so much evidence has been fabricated. Can you not apply the same thoughts to the footage that you're analyzing now? But no, she doesn't. She takes everything that's been bona fide, above board. And indeed, not only is that not so, it's been shown to be not so in 1,000,001 different places. Most likely facts of it is, well, you know, without being able to prove it substantially, but yeah, a few different circumstantial evidences that are pretty telling. But that the 9/11 movie that we saw was made a year beforehand, at least a year beforehand. I already said that the soundtrack to 9/11 was Kid A by Radiohead. So when you play the 102-minute movie that was presented to us alongside the album Kid A, it syncs up perfectly. You just type into your Google Kid A syncs up at 9/11, and you should get a few links up. If not, you can just ask me for that. But yeah, another key player, Radiohead, another key player in all of this. And it turned out, you know, because that was of such significance, I knew that Radiohead would have some significance in terms of the dodo as well, or the flat earth. I always knew they were a flat earth band. It's pretty subtle in places, but it's there. But when I found that, let me bring up the link actually. If no one wants to come in, when I found that, I mean, again, at what point are we going to say that it goes beyond coincidence? You know, well, beyond that point anyway. But just to show you, I mean, when I found out about the dodo, and I sort of equated it to connection, really high, I suppose. We find it down here, number 6. There's 42 facts about Radiohead. I haven't been near the rest of them even. I don't need to, but you can be sure to be loaded with. Look, I'm just looking at this. Amnesiac was dedicated to Tom's son, Noah. Noah. Interesting choice of name, right? Yeah. Here's the point I wanted to, this is very interesting as well. Number 6 had Thom Yorke's brother, again, New York, 9/11, but Thom Yorke's brothers, Andy, nicknamed him Dodo. And he was also known as Salamander in school. How strange, I mean. There's how strange. So again, we're not to take it literally. Tom's name wasn't Dodo. He's anything but a dodo, Thom Yorke. He's a brilliant songwriter and brilliant performer, but an insider nonetheless, from Oxford nonetheless as well, where we're going to find a dodo. But yeah, they have Tom nicknamed as Dodo. Fantastic, you know. So that's a direct clue. And when you know, if you just came by this, then you type in Dodo, and then you come up with Alice in Wonderland. Actually, that'd be interesting to type in now. Radiohead and Alice in Wonderland. But here's another interesting. What do you call it? He was also known as Salamander in school. Salamander means to me is a creature that will to save its central core, will sacrifice its limbs, be it its tail or its leg or its whatever, to live another day. This is what I see, a direct sort of equation to the earth in a sense. The trees were collapsed, and you know, the sacrifice had to be made to save the central core, which is then after the inundation. The take significance of salamander there, but yeah, it's only when you put all these things together, isn't it? And look, Noah is associated with a flood, isn't it? It's excellent. Let me just type in. Actually, let me go through. I'll go through the rest of it. Radiohead. That's Wonderland. Be sure there's going to be some connection there. Any band you can think of, you type it in, you're going to get connection. And they have some very interesting yeah, you can just see it here, in which he describes it as one like creative process of feeling trapped. 11 of the best songs inspired by Alice in Wonderland. Oh, that was a very interesting article here, yeah. Oh, wait, I'm going to read that. Wait till you hear this. Wait till you hear this. Yeah, wait till you see this. This is excellent. It's just so pertinent as well. Let me just make sure that no one wants to come in terms of a chat. Okay. No, I don't see anyone. So I'm just going to read this then. Mark says, Scouts, you were stealing cars at 5. Wow. You have to have a thick skin, Scouser, don't you? But we can laugh at these. We can laugh at all of this. Let me get rid of this. Wait, yeah, let me read this. Wait, let's see how just so many connections to to the dodo there are here. This is amazing. So we also have February 27, 2 times 7, or 2 7. 27 is 999, which is 666 inverted. So let me read this. Yeah. Sunday afternoons, Thom Yorke enjoys taking his kids to Oxford University's Museum of Natural History. This is where I say we'll find the most accurate representation of the dodo or the flat Earth map in the University of Oxford Natural History Museum, a stately non-Gothic building on the outskirts of the city centre. They wander around the grand atrium, past the skull of the humpbacked whale propped up like a massive bear trap, and the stuffed dodo bird behind glass, and the creepy statues of the great men of science. Creepy statues of the great men of science. Interesting, isn't it? I mean, are the great men of science really great men of science? We know Einstein wasn't. It's the real story with Newton, for instance. Copernicus, don't think he existed. He fell before the 1598 cutoff line, as many others do indeed. I talked about Leonardo da Vinci, and what greater way, what more cunning way to give his own existence some sort of solidity than associate him with the historical possible historical figure, Jesus. You know, so even if you doubt Jesus, here we have Leonardo da Vinci possibly involved in the hoax of the possible hoax of the Shroud of Turin. So you can see how to do it there. The statues are extremely lifelike, except for their eyeballs, which, thanks to some odd sculptorial decision, have been rendered as entirely blank orbs, giving boyish, pensive Newton and bearded, stoic Darwin, an unreasonably furious-looking Aristotle, all terrifying, dead-eyed stares. Well, is that significant now in itself? Did these? Well, I think they're telling you, first of all, these are all major influencers and just everything modern. But yeah, this is sort of painting a different picture of these characters. So again, underneath the surface layer, we have encoded language. And of course, York's kids love the enormous dinosaur skeletons which dominate the room, rearing up into fearsome poses. Approximately 150 years earlier, a sickly, a sickly, stuttering Oxford mathematician called Charles de Dodgson would come to the museum with his college dean's young daughter, Alice Liddell. This is important as well, this surname, Liddell. And I hope that might ring a bell with a few people. So to entertain her, he would make up fantastical stories about the dodo and various other animals. He didn't make up any stories about the dodo. The dodo features in chapter 3, very briefly, and there's no more mention of it, overtly anyway. So again, we're being drawn to the dodo to look further. It's twice the dodo is mentioned. But Lewis Carroll strayed into the reckoning. And various other animals, which he continues to publish under his pen name Lewis Carroll as Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. York, who is 39, he has a 3-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. 3 6s, right? 3-year-old daughter, 6-year-old son, that's your 666. Also occasionally writes about animals, though not in a way meant to delight children. Myxomatosis from the 2000 Radiohead album Hail to the Thief is named for a horrible disease that kills rabbits and opens with the line, "The mongrel cat came home holding half a head." I remember that song, it's a great song. Then there is Weird Fishes, our Peggy, a track on the most recent Radiohead album, In Rainbows, in which York imagines himself at the bottom of the ocean being nibbled by the fish and worms. Pluralizing fish as fishes is an unusual choice, and whenever York howls the word weird fishes, the questionable grammar makes him sound like a demented schoolboy. In Rainbows, interesting as well. I say rainbows didn't come into existence until after the flood. This is why Lord God's covenant with man came after the flood, and the rainbow represented that covenant with man. Well, I say beforehand we had the tree with the light energies being distributed as it was designed to do. Then afterhand you had the tree felled, and the light energy is still being transmitted, but up through the stump now, which is circular in shape. As that energy barrier, then we see rainbows, and rainbows are just the outline of the stump itself, where the light energies meet the peripheral. If you think of a rainbow in terms of an arch, well, you're wrong. If you rise higher, you'll see it's a full circle. So that's how I see it. It's and that's how it ties into the flood as well, which was just mentioned earlier on. So yeah, immediately we're introduced to Charles Dodgson. He wouldn't be the first person you jump to in terms of history of Oxford, or history of Oxford Museum, natural history. But nonetheless, there he is, front and center. Yeah, let me just read on a small bit. The rest of the song has a muffled underwater quality with the titular arpeggio underlaid by a spare insistent percussion, and the guitar notes occasionally warping to sound like a steel drum might be buried deep in the mix. And another strange turn of phrase, your croons, your eyes, they turn me, creating an interesting tension by never adding the expected on. And with all the references to freedom, why should I stay here? Everybody leaves if they get a chance. The song could almost pass for a morbid parody of an early Springsteen. Of Thunder Road had bursted loose from small town Jersey by throwing themselves off a bridge. Hit the bottom, York sings in the final lines, and escape. Yeah, that's just one of the links. So you see itself. Oh, hang on. I haven't read the whole of this article, by the way. But I should think that they're more significant now than ever. In one of their latest songs, anyway. Let me stop that there. Just those few facts themselves. Fantastic. Again, all pointing the same way. But their latest effort, very interesting music video, where eventually he ends up going north. He's walking through all these different doors, sort of oblivious and avoiding things around him, until eventually he makes his way. You can only describe it as north, snow-filled mountains, snow-filled areas, and he climbs into sort of an underground. It's almost like the base of a tree stump, and lies down, and it goes all sort of freaky and weird. So, what do you think about that? X marks the spot, north center, all pointing the same way. Definitely should look into Radiohead's latest productions a little bit more, but that's just one of the links. Again, so many other links that all support, all pointing to the same thing. And just for your own satisfaction, type in your own favorite band. And Alice in Wonderland afterwards. There'll always be a reference to either Alice in Wonderland directly or the Beatles and Sgt. Pepper's. Always, because they're all part and parcel of this great. Now, they don't set out like that, but they all become part and parcel of this greater puzzle that we're about solving. And that's for all of us. They're exempt from solving the puzzle, obviously, because they're insiders. Maybe they can't get. Maybe that's something outside of them. You know, they can't get to paradise. It's just the price you pay. I don't know. I'm not sure how it works out. Yeah. So I wonder how the no chat night went. Not very well, right? So let's read a few comments. Oh gosh, even to read out some of these names, you feel dirty, right? Okay. I didn't want to stay on for too long anyway. I just wanted to get a few more chapters out of the way, and I think there's definitely a few other hangouts going. For anyone there, no, maybe I shouldn't read out any comments because you know what you're going to get, right? So I don't know which way works best. I really don't know what the best. What do you think, Scouser? If I give you a wrench now for the last few minutes, what would happen? But no, I won't give out any wrenches tonight. And look, what can we do? What can we do? Does anyone know any good vag hygiene chains? I take it that or chans, is it channels? Sweetie Taco. You need more than a mop and a bucket. It's hilarious. I mean, you have to laugh, don't you? Let's read Good Day, Happy Campers. Chris Truthseeker's undying love and dedication to flat earth gives even the staunchest and most hardest flat earthers a quivering, throbbing boner. Okay, his thirst for knowledge and cum really drives them. Well, he is a devotee, isn't he, Chris Truthseeker? We had our little run-ins occasionally, but I don't make too much of that. He was right in one sense when I misidentified an honest guess to any of the aura, but it wasn't for want of having good reason. Like, you know, they sounded exactly the same, they spoke about exactly the same things, but they turned out to be separate people. But what made Chris's behavior peculiar was he came in all guns blazing and called it an absolutely crazy and stupid idea that the two people were and had anything to do with one another, even though he'd have no business to do that. He wasn't a regular in Jamie's chat, and he yeah, again, he came out all guns blazing, so that was peculiar in itself. But no, I did have to apologize for that because I was wrong, even though I have my there's some other thoughts in that matter. But yeah, this is the nature of the arena. I have absolutely no problems putting my hands up saying when I am wrong, and if I am wronging anybody, certainly I want to be the first to know it. So Yvette, sweaty taco sauce, bukkake face. What are you doing? It says Troll Army, Rebel, Cigar Face, Captain Bullshit, Morky Love, Channel Q, Charlotte, Cat Earth, JJ Lottie says, Sure Matty, Twitwit, Ray, we act like your friend, but we will destroy your chat. Yeah, this don't forget Mark Taylor in there. Did you have him? Although he's not quite part of the same crew. Mark Taylor's part of the Gem Panda paper explanator Chris Effie, I'm going to say, crew. So there are quite a few different crews around, but this is the tough one, isn't it? The one thing I will say, Yvette Sweaty, is at this stage in the game, I think it doesn't really matter a whole hell of a deal. There's no place you can go now which will be free from these encounters. So we have to use it to our advantage. And if we can sort of maybe cast our mind to the possibility that everybody is out to help in one way or another, you have to wait. The individual has to wake up, and for the individual to wake up, they have to be challenged. But I can definitely see that it could easily generate quite a lot of negative. Indeed, I used to feel that way myself. You know, this is a fight. This is a fight for life, I guess. And if you're going to take the side of the adversary, well, then we can but look upon you as enemies. You know, enemy combatants. But yeah, your thinking, our thinking evolves, and I'm not saying that anybody should think along the same lines as I do, but that's just the way I think at the minute. And yeah, it is a difficult one, though. It is a difficult one. As I said, there isn't much feedback. When I went into chat last night, all there was just a big list of deleted messages. So I know that some interesting stuff is said, and I could use it and incorporate some of the things into my thinking, but I'm missing out on all of that. But if it's of value, I guess I'll come back again. Any tips for yeast infection? Urine, right? Okay, man. You got it. Since you asked for it. It's going to be havoc. Raise havoc. Aeon, how you doing, man? How you doing? I am Faze. How you doing? Fanny Lancer. Antonio Subras. I'm sure that's not the real one. Antonio's gone away for a while. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to get into anything else too much tonight. I think I'm happy enough with reading that, and I can just mull over those 2 chapters, see if anything occurs during the evening. So I need to go wild on your wrench for a few minutes, man. I need to go wild on your wrench for a few minutes, and then I can shut it down, and the traveling troop can move on, move elsewhere. I'm happy enough for that. Well, for a change, I'll read the whole. I'll sing the whole song here, just for a party change, so you can go wild for the last few minutes, Scouser, because I'm finishing up anyway. But again, I just didn't intend to come on for too long. So. That's one thing I haven't done actually since Flat Earth, gone to any forums. It's all sort of insignificant in one sense now, godlike productions and all of these type of things. And I bet all of these antagonists are doing the rounds in these forums as well. And I'm sure in one form or another we would have encountered them along the path. Okay, so let me sing. I'll sing the whole of this, maybe a bit more lively. And I'll say thanks again for tuning in. I might read a couple more chapters tomorrow, and yeah, take it in your stride. And this again. What can I say? This is a puzzle for all of us. So give it your own consideration and see where it takes you. Oh, that money that I had, I spent it in good company, and of all the harm that I did, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fell to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you all. Of all the comrades that e'er I had, they're sorry for my going away. And all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls onto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I will gently rise and I'll softly call good night, and joy be with you all. If I had money enough to spend and leisure time to sit a while, there is a fair maid in town that solely has my heart beguiled. Her rosy cheeks, her ruby lips, I own she has my heart enthralled. So fell to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you all. These extra verses, my dearest dear, the time draws near when here no longer can I stay. There's not a comrade I leave behind, but is grieving for my going away. But since it has been so ordered, and once the past it can't be called, so fell to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you. If I had money enough to spend, if I had time to waste away, there is a fair maid in town I fain would while her heart away. Her rosy cheeks, her dimpled chin, my heart she has beguiled away. So fill to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you all day. If I had money for to spend, I would spend it in her company. And all the harm that I have done, I hope it's pardoned I will make. And all I've done for want of it, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you all. Last verse. A man may drink and not be drunk. A man may fight and not be slain. A man may court a pretty girl and perhaps be welcomed back again. But since it has so ordered been, by a time to rise and fall, come fill to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you all. Come fill to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you all. Thanks again, friends, and love to all. I shall see you soon. I love you, Steve.